Hello again, everyone. So some time ago, I did a video on MPC compressor types, what they were, when to use them, gave you the definitions, and I also gave you a myriad of scenarios whereby which you could use a particular compressor, right? So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand on that and show you a method whereby which you can prevent yourself from overcompensating on the low end in your mixes. But before I take you over the demonstration, I want to go over something called the Fletcher-Munson curve. And in the spirit of succinctness, this is just a visual representation of how humans perceive sound. So all this is suggesting is that we are sensitive to the mid-range frequencies. The threshold of audibility or our sound pressure levels don't necessarily have to be high in order for us to hear mid-range frequencies. We can hear, in other words, we can hear mid-range frequencies at extremely low volumes. We would have to increase our sound pressure levels, our sound intensity, our volumes in order to hear the lower frequencies. So whenever we are mixing, sometimes what winds up happening is we have a tendency to increase the amplitude of our studio monitors so we can hear the low range frequencies. Some of us even go so far as to pick up subwoofers. And essentially what we run the risk of doing is overcompensating on the low end just because we cannot hear it. So how do we combat that? Well, that takes us to the example that's in front of us. So here I have technically 3-track project here. I have a drum track, and then of course this was just a sample that I was using for the guitar, but ultimately I refined it to this guitar sample, and then I have a bass track. So let's see here. So I'm going to play this through. All right, somewhat of a raw mix there. And actually I did not, so I recorded myself playing the guitar and I didn't quite, I did a little bit of mixing on my guitar, but that's not the point. So the point is, and our focus for today is going to be the bass track. So now the bass track, we can hear it just fine, but the question is, would we be able to mix this at lower amplitudes if we needed to? And the way this is arranged, we should be able to do that without a problem, right? But just to reinforce, so here's our main output right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to decrease the amplitude of our main output here. Now, so at lower amplitudes, we're still hearing the guitar and the snare drum and what have you, but not so much the bass anymore. Again, this goes back to the Fletcher-Munson curve. These are these mid-range frequencies that we're hearing right now are the frequencies to which we are the most sensitive. In order to hear the bass frequencies, we have to kind of drag this up in order to hear them, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a VCA compressor, for the sake of precision, just to make our bass-line more leveled with the rest of the tracks. So let's see here. We're going to go to our channel mixer. We'll go to our bass track. We'll go to our effects. And I already have a VCA compressor preloaded. I just have it turned off. I'm going to turn it on. And just then what it did was it just made the bass more translucent, more ostensible, right? And these settings, well, the settings aren't so important. I would recommend that you, number one, understand your settings. And again, I go over that during the compressor types explained video. But I would have you adjust your settings to taste once you have a firm understanding of what they do. And again, I highly recommend that you reference that video. So, but now that I have my VCA compressor in place, let's go back to the main. Lower our volume here. And of course the bass frequencies are going to drop out first, but at the same time, we can actually hear where they set relative to the remainder of the tracks. Bring it up. As a matter of fact, we can still hear it here. Hear it here. So let's go back over. Switch the compressor off. Significant difference there. A subtle difference, but a significant difference nonetheless. So let's go back to our main. Let's go ahead and increase the amplitude again. And for the most part, excuse me, and for the most part, that is one of the advantages to using a compressor. In this instance, I use the VCA compressor just for the sake of precision. VCA compressors, not unlike FET compressors, are very, very precise. But VCAs actually do a really, really good job at preserving transients due to their quick attack. Or should I say their responsiveness, rather. All right, so in the event that you are experiencing an issue with a weak bass track or a bass track that gets buried in the mix, or you can't hear it at low amplitudes, the reason behind that, again, the Fletcher-Munson curve. Remember, you are, as a human being, are extremely sensitive to mid-range frequencies. So in order to compensate for that, what we have to do is use a dynamics. We have to use a dynamics processing tool like a compressor or a limiter in order to compensate for that, or in order to reduce the gain at certain frequencies, certain thresholds, and what have you, just in order to level it out with the rest of the tracks. So all of that being said, I would recommend that you give it a shot, give it a try. Let me know what you think. If you guys have any questions about anything that I've covered today, please leave them in the comments, and I'll catch up with you guys next time. All right, thanks.